Imagine you're walking into a boardroom, but not your standard, glass-walled corporate box in Silicon Valley. Think more like a private bank in Geneva or Zurich.
Oh, yeah. Heavy oak doors, absolute
Yeah.
silence.
Centuries of unbroken tradition. And you sit down, and placed right in front of you is this manual. It's heavy, like museum-grade heavy, bound in this high-density matte book cloth.
Right.
And the color is this very specific, deep burgundy, like hex code 5C1F2E kind of specific. And right on the cover, pressed directly into this heavy organic cotton hemp paper with no ink, just a deep, tactile, blind deboss, is a Celtic knotwork seal.
I love that visual.
Yeah, and as you trace it with your finger, you realize the knotwork actually morphs into the blueprint of a boardroom command table.
It's just an incredibly uncompromising aesthetic, isn't it? It doesn't feel like software documentation at all. It feels like a treaty.
It really does. It feels premium, European, and frankly, expensive. And that is the exact mindset we need for our mission today, because welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are opening up a highly specialized strategy manual for enterprise executives.
The big leagues.
Yeah, specifically, we've got our hands on a section of the AI Skills Cookbook. This is Course V, titled The Patrons Table. And our goal today is to unpack this massive shift in how organizations think about artificial intelligence.
Right, because up until now, AI governance has basically been treated as, well, a defensive compliance cost.
It's a total necessary evil.
Exactly. It's the operational kitchen, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You just spend money on compliance to avoid getting hit by massive EU AI Act fines. But Course V is where we actually leave the kitchen and enter the dining room.
The patrons table.
Right. This is where the patron actually pays for the meal. What's fascinating here is how the source material reframes governance entirely. I mean, it's no longer about playing defense. It's about weaponizing your compliance to win enterprise deals, lock out competitors, and charge a massive premium for trust.
And to understand how this manual actually accomplishes that, we really need to talk about its cultural anchors. Because the book draws heavily on two very specific locations to build its strategy.
Switzerland and Ireland.
Exactly. We have Switzerland, a country that proved over, 4 centuries of private banking that absolute trust and discretion is the ultimate commercial currency. And then we have Ireland, which is positioned strategically as the home jurisdiction of lowest regulatory friction.
Those anchors are crucial, and they establish a concept that runs through this entire strategy, which is AI terroir.
Oh, like with wine.
Yeah, exactly like wine. You know how terroir refers to the specific soil, climate, and region that gives a grape its unique flavor and, well, its value?
Right, so a grape grown in Champagne is inherently more valuable than the exact same grape grown somewhere else, purely because of the rigorous regional rules governing it.
Precisely. The book argues that enterprise AI has a terroir as well. The regulatory soil and the governance environment an AI system is grown in dictates its commercial value.
That makes a lot of sense.
And this sets the tone for the book's signature doctrine. We really need to keep this in mind throughout this entire deep dive. The quote is, "Intelligence is the ingredient. Governance is the recipe. Trust is the meal."
Trust is the meal. I love that framing. But, let's look at how you actually serve that meal to a client. Because before you can pitch a premium governed AI dish to an enterprise patron, you have to know exactly where to serve it.
And exactly how to control the room.
Right. We're talking about the macro level of jurisdictional strategy here. The manual lays out something called the 4-jurisdiction patron map.
And this requires a level of discipline that, honestly, most tech companies completely lack. To explain this, the source uses a really brilliant historical metaphor.
The Dutch East India Company, right?
Yeah, the VOC.
Yeah.
In the 17th century, they became the most valuable corporation in history. But they didn't just operate as one massive blob-chasing trade everywhere at once.
Right.
They structured themselves as a strict federation of 6 chambers, Amsterdam, Zeeland, and so on, each with its own specific, highly regulated jurisdictional grant. They anchored by jurisdiction first.
So in a highly regulated world, you're saying jurisdiction predicts success better than, say, company size or the specific industry you're targeting?
Without a doubt. The map here is unyielding. You pick the country before you pick the customer.
Wow.
Yeah, the 4 permitted jurisdictions are strictly defined. You have Ireland, that's the lowest friction home base to set up your corporate structure. You have Switzerland, which acts as the ultimate anchor for highly regulated pharma and medtech.
Which makes sense with Swissmedic and all that.
Exactly. Then you have the broader EU, specifically where the AI Act is enforced. And finally, the U.S. is a secondary entry point. But, and this is key, only after you have those European references locked in.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of a tech executive listening to this. We are in the middle of an absolute AI gold rush.
Oh, absolutely.
Every company on earth is scrambling to buy. If a massive, incredibly wealthy enterprise in, say, Singapore or Latin America comes to you and wants to buy a huge deployment of your system, do you really just say no? I mean, isn't turning away millions in an AI gold rush professional malpractice?
I know it feels completely counterintuitive, but the source argues the exact opposite. Jurisdictional scatter is a massive discipline failure. Taking that Singapore deal might look like a win on this quarter's balance sheet, but saying no is actually your strategic advantage.
How? Because you're literally leaving money on the table.
Because you are saving 12 weeks of wasted engineering and sales effort pursuing a deal that will ultimately die in a local regulatory audit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if you don't hold the specific certifications their local jurisdiction requires, the deal will unravel right when it's time to deploy. So by refusing the meeting, you are protecting your resources to completely dominate the jurisdictions where your governance story is already ironclad.
Wow. Okay, so let's say you've maintained that discipline, you've picked the right country, you have the meeting with the patron.
Mm.
Here's where the psychology of the pitch gets really interesting. The manual introduces a tactic called the inspector anchor question.
Oh, this is an absolute power move.
It really is. It sets the gravity of the room immediately. You drop this in the first 5 minutes of the pitch. You don't even open a laptop. You just look across the table at the executive and ask, if a Swissmedic inspector questions an AI-assisted decision today, can your system perfectly reconstruct the exact evidence, rule, and human authorization that drove it?
And we really need to unpack why that works so perfectly. Swissmedic is the Swiss surveillance authority for medicines and medical devices. They are incredibly rigorous.
Right.
So by invoking an inspector, specifically a Swiss inspector, you completely change the center of gravity in the room. You aren't talking about tokens per second or, how cool your neural net architecture is. You are speaking the language of enterprise liability.
You're reminding them that AI isn't just a toy. It's a massive risk factor. And then, once you've anchored them in that reality, you follow up with a technique the book calls the refuse to deploy pitch.
Yes.
Because usually, if you or I sit through a tech sales pitch, it's just a laundry list of flashy capabilities. Look at all the amazing magical things our AI can do. But this strategy says you actually lead with a negation panel.
Exactly. It draws on the ancient Spartan tradition of the laconic refusal. Just short, blunt, uncompromising. You provide a literal catalog of what your AI will absolutely refuse to do.
You state up front that if a specific AI system cannot be fully audited, if its logic cannot be challenged, or if its decisions cannot be perfectly reconstructed.
Or if there's no kill switch to stop it in its tracks.
Right. You just simply will not deploy it for them. You tell the patron, we will not build that for you because it is unsafe.
Which is brilliant because you aren't just selling software anymore. You're selling institutional safety. You are demonstrating your capability through deterrence.
That's a great way to put it.
Think about how a bank vault sells itself. It doesn't sell you on how shiny the metal is, right? It sells you on how hard it is to open when it shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's spot on. But getting the patron to trust you and agree to those terms is really only half the battle. Because once you have that trust, you run into the classic enterprise software trap, which is the endless, unpaid proof of concept.
Oh.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The client says, we love it, let's do a pilot. And suddenly your engineering team is doing 6 months of free customization that never actually converts to a paid contract.
The dreaded procurement purgatory, which is exactly why the next major section of this manual focuses entirely on how to structure the deal and spring a trap on the enterprise so they actually have to buy it.
Right.
And it starts with the preconditions for what the book calls the inaugural certified partner. If you are going to take on your very first patron, there are 3 non-negotiable requirements before you even agree to a pilot.
Let's walk through those mechanics because they're fascinating. First, you demand an Article 22 mandate. Now, for anyone who isn't deep in European data privacy law, Article 22 is a specific part of the GDPR.
Right, the General Data Protection Regulation.
Exactly. And it basically says a citizen has the right not to be subject to a decision based solely on automated processing. So if an enterprise is using AI to approve a loan or, say, triage a medical patient, the law mandates a human in the loop and strict auditability.
Precisely. You are verifying that the patron actually has to act. It's not a nice to have. It's a
Yep.
regulatory mandate. They are legally exposed without you.
And the second precondition is a fixed productized fee. No free pilots, no educational tinkering. They pay for the engagement.
Right.
And the third precondition is a WORM evidence clause. Now, WORM stands for write once, read many. Think of it like a flight recorder's black box or a physical ledger book written in permanent ink. You can read the logs as many times as you want, but you mathematically cannot alter or erase what the AI did.
Yeah.
So why is demanding a WORM clause from the patrons so critical here?
Because it creates an undeniable cryptographic log of the AI's decision-making process. These three preconditions eliminate the tire kickers. They completely eliminate the companies that just want to play with AI for a press release.
If they won't agree to it, you just walk.
Exactly. If the patron won't agree to a legal mandate, a fixed fee, and an immutable evidence log, you walk away.
But when they do agree, you move into a highly structured 90-day evidence pilot. Notice the phrasing there, by the way. It's an evidence pilot, not a feature pilot. The engagement is a strict binary 90-day window. And the deliverable at the end isn't a flashy demo. It is a hard, cryptographically pinned evidence pack.
Which solves a massive mechanical problem in B2B sales.
Yeah.
Procurement departments don't know how to value a demo of an AI writing a nice email.
Sure.
But an evidence pack that proves the company is mathematically compliant with the EU AI Act.
Yeah.
That has immediate, undeniable value.
Which sets up the commercial lock-in. And honestly, this might be my favorite mechanism in the entire deep dive. It's called the auditor trap.
Oh, it's so good.
So you are running this 90-day pilot. At day 60, you do something completely counterintuitive. You formally invite the patron's own internal auditor, the person whose entire job is to find flaws and kill risky software, to come and inspect your pilot's evidence artifacts.
It's a fascinating architectural move. You are willingly inserting the final boss into the room early.
It reminds me of the Michelin guide analogy they use in the sources.
Right.
So Andre and Edward Michelin started the guide just to sell tires, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
But in 1926, they introduced the star system for fine dining. And the true power of the Michelin star didn't come from the very first time an inspector showed up and gave a restaurant a star. The thing that literally changed the culinary industry forever was the return visit.
Yes.
Chefs would completely restructure their kitchens, their sourcing, their entire lives, just to ensure they kept the star for when the inspector eventually came back. The return is the commercial weapon.
That is a perfect analogy. And the auditor trap applies that exact same mechanical pressure to enterprise software. By inviting the patron's auditor at day 60, you are laying your work bare. You say, here is our worm evidence log. Try to break it.
Yeah.
And if the system is genuinely good, if it's perfectly reconstructible, the auditor will validate it. They will sign off on the evidence pack because it frankly makes their job easier.
And the moment that auditor signs their name,
your AI is no longer a vendor deliverable.
whoa,
Mechanically, legally, it has just become part of the patron's internal compliance record.
it is their system now.
Exactly. So fast forward to day 90. If the patron's procurement team wants to replace you with a cheaper, faster AI competitor, they can't just quietly drop your software. They now have to go to their own chief risk officer and their own auditor and explain why they want to rip out a working, signed-off compliance control just to save a few bucks on an unproven system.
It's unbreakable enterprise lock-in. And it's not set by trickery, it's set by pure quality. You use their own governance to make yourself indispensable.
Right.
But okay, let's look at the human element here. For the auditor trap to work, you need the right people in the loop. How do you make sure the deal doesn't stall just because the actual decision makers weren't paying attention?
That requires rigorous gatekeeping. And the manual addresses this with a concept called the three-authority door. To understand this, look at how the Vatican Apostolic Archive operates.
Oh, this is a great example.
Right. To access its most secure, sensitive records, there are doors that literally require 3 separate keys held by 3 separate people to be turned simultaneously.
So translating that to a modern business deal, you literally refuse to have the kickoff meeting unless 3 specific authorities are physically or virtually present: the signing authority, the delivery authority, and the partnership authority. You need the person who writes the check, the person who integrates the software, and the person who champions the relationship.
Exactly. If one is missing, the door doesn't open. You just reschedule.
Okay, I have to challenge this because it sounds great on paper, but think about the reality of corporate politics.
Yep.
If I'm an executive and I finally get an internal champion at a Fortune 500 company who loves our AI, and they say, hey, can you just show me a demo so I can get my boss on board? If I say no, not until your boss is in the room, I just sound incredibly arrogant? Aren't I alienating the very person trying to help me?
It's a very valid concern.
Yeah.
But the source argues that this discipline actually empowers your internal champion, even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
Really?
Yeah, here is the mechanism behind it. If you just give that champion a quick, flashy demo without the signing authority present, you are just taxing your own novelty. You become just another neat tool they saw on a Tuesday.
Ah.
The champion has no leverage. But by demanding the three authorities, you give the champion a reason to elevate the conversation internally. You force them to frame this to their boss, not as a cool tech demo, but as an enterprise-grade compliance initiative.
A meeting without signing authority is a tax on your novelty. That's a great way to phrase it. You are forcing the client to treat you seriously. So assuming you hold the line, the door opens, and all three authorities are sitting at the table, you don't want to just hit them with a 40-slide PowerPoint deck.
No, absolutely not, because then you lose them in the weeds. Instead, you present what the manual calls the patron tasting menu.
And the visual here is brilliant. Imagine the tasting menu at Osteria Francescana, the legendary 3-Michelin-star restaurant in Italy. You aren't handed a massive binder of every ingredient they use. You are handed a single, beautifully designed page.
Right.
So for the AI pitch, you slide a single-page portfolio diagram across the boardroom table.
It presents your entire strategic firm on one plate. At the center, you have the inaugural partner doctrine, showing exactly how you engage. Surrounding it are the components we just discussed.
The 90-day pilot timeline, the inspector anchor question.
The negation panel of what you refuse to do, and the trust dividend.
It gives the executives the entire landscape in 3 seconds. They see the exact mechanics of your governed capabilities. And it naturally opens up cross-selling because they see the whole menu at once without you having to pitch each item individually.
And that visual clarity is what sets the stage for the ultimate payoff. Because let's fast forward a bit. The deals are signed, the 90-day pilots triggered the auditor trap, and the systems are actually deployed. Yeah. The CEO of 2030 still has a major hurdle. They have to stand in front of their board of directors and the CFO and prove that all this rigorous, heavy-lift governance, the restricted jurisdictions, the worm logs, the audits, actually made the company money.
Right, because the CFO is always going to ask, what was the ROI on all this compliance overhead? Wouldn't we have made more money if we just moved fast and broke things like everyone else?
Which brings us to the final segment of the book, which is the standing state. And the ultimate weapon here is the trust dividend chart. To explain this, the source points to a fascinating macroeconomic parallel, the economic miracle of Singapore.
Right, think back to 1965. Singapore is suddenly ejected from Malaysia. They have no natural resources, very little land, and no obvious path to economic survival.
But the Monetary Authority of Singapore made a deliberate architectural decision. They decided to turn regulator-grade trust into their primary commercial export.
Wow.
Whether it was private banking, maritime shipping, or data centers, they attracted global capital specifically because they enforced incredibly strict, uncompromising oversight.
So the safety with her product.
Exactly. The premium that flows from being completely trusted by your counterparties, that is the trust dividend, and it created the steepest economic growth curve of the modern era.
So how does that macroeconomic history lesson translate to a chart for our AI CEO in 2030? What does the trust dividend actually look like on a boardroom screen?
It is a single, undeniable trend line. It tracks the revenue generated per governed contract versus the revenue generated per ungoverned contract over time.
It just ends the debate. You aren't arguing with the CFO about anecdotes or abstract safety metrics anymore. A rising line proves mathematically that governance is not a cost center. When a client trusts your system, they give you more data, more critical workflows, and more money. The governance compounds value over time.
Exactly. And that compounding value doesn't just happen by accident. It is orchestrated continuously from the grand finale of the cookbook, which is the CEO 2030 Command Center.
This is the closing plate of the entire manual. And visually, the source describes this like a NASA mission control room, but designed for enterprise AI.
It's quite the setup.
It is. Imagine 8 physical or digital consoles arranged in an enfilade, a suite of rooms aligned with each other. Each console represents a distinct domain of the enterprise, and they are named after animals to quickly identify their function.
And we really need to look at how these consoles actually interact mechanically. You have the stag, the owl, the lion, the beaver, the badger, the dragon.
Let's track a specific action through these consoles to see the governance in real time. Say the system needs to process a massive batch of medical claims. The STAG console represents incoming requests, so it catches the demand. But the STAG can't just act on its own. It hands the request to the OWL console, which holds the knowledge and regulatory rulebook.
Right, so the OWL checks the request against the law.
Yes.
And even if the OWL says it's legally permissible, the action still isn't executed. It must pass to the Lion console, which holds the authority and cryptographic signatures.
The muscle.
Exactly. Only when the Lion signs off. Perhaps requiring a human in the loop does the action proceed. And finally, the Badger console locks the worm evidence log deep in the vault so it can never be altered.
It's an entire ecosystem of checks and balances. And spanning the entire room, overhead, is the REN readiness banner, showing live states across the enterprise. You know, ready, warning, degraded, critical.
But the most important detail in this entire setup is the seating arrangement. The CEO sits at the center console, but they are acting as the flight director.
Oh, that's a vital distinction. The CEO isn't personally clicking approve on every single AI action. I mean, that would create an impossible bottleneck.
Right. They are orchestrating the flow between the Stag, the Owl, and the Lion. They're monitoring the system's overall readiness.
Because this command center is not a one-off event. It is the standing state of the business. The book outlines a closing banquet discipline. Every quarter, the executive team gathers around this table, and the current state of those consoles is the agenda.
Yeah, you don't need a massive status report.
No. You look at the REN banner, you look at the trust dividend chart. If the dividend is compounding and the banner is green, the firm is healthy. The CEO who has built this infrastructure gets to sit back and watch it run.
So if we step back and look at the profound shift Course V represents, this isn't just a compliance manual. It's a fundamental blueprint for using rigorous governance to outmaneuver competitors who are still operating under the old move fast and break things mentality.
You're taking the exact things that everyone else thinks slow them down, strict jurisdiction, immutable worm logs, and heavy auditor scrutiny, and you are turning them into your primary competitive advantage. You are charging a premium for trust.
Because the enterprise market of 2030 won't just ask what your AI can do. Capabilities will be entirely commoditized. The market will ask what your AI refuses to do and how quickly you can mathematically prove it.
Yeah.
The book leaves us with one unyielding mantra. You will eventually eat what you sow. The CEO who governed well and built the architecture eats well. The CEO who cut corners to move fast, well, they learn exactly what they sowed the very moment the regulator arrives.
That is a deeply powerful image, and it brings us right back to the beginning, to the concept of AI terroir. Think about your own organization right now. Think about the regulatory soil your systems are currently growing in. If a Swiss medic inspector or, an internal auditor walked into your boardroom tomorrow morning unannounced and asked you to perfectly reconstruct a high-risk AI decision made 6 months ago, what would you be serving them?
Would you be handing over a meticulously documented, undeniable 5-star meal?
Or would you be scrambling through your pockets, sweating bullets, trying to find the recipe? The 2030 market will definitely know the difference.